Welcome to Warwick Mushroom Farms. This is a mushroom farm. Unlike the regular wooden mushroom houses from PA, this is a Dutch design. This is the largest mushroom farm in the Western Hemisphere, as we know it. It's not the largest farm, but it's the largest farm within one location as we know, the world. This farm operates on a 24-hour schedule. We employ more than 300 people in this farm, and right here we can show you the start of the process of the mushrooms. So this is the start of an 8-week process. This is the filling. We start filling rooms. As you can see, there's a pulling winch that's pulling a net across. As we can see outside. So this is the compost that's coming into the room right now. And unlike other, the Pennsylvania farms where they have multiple people doing this job, they kind of have company modern design. We have machines that pretty much take care of most of the work. We only have 3 guys here, which are pretty much operators of the machine. You see the truck in here that's back into the header, and then the compost comes off the truck into the belt. It kind of evens it out on the machine, and then we catch it to make sure that it's correctly. We cover this with plastic to make sure that we keep the temperature cool for the compost. This compost is pretty warm, so if we don't cool it down, we have a place to go on.
Where do you get your compost?
We get our compost from 2 suppliers. We get our compost from Laurel Valley Farms and Kaoling Farms in PA. So everything, this is phase 2 compost. This is a phase 2 operation. Phase 1 is pretty much the start of the process. It's where they cook the compost, and then from there they put it into tunnels for a pasteurization process. After that, it's when we get it. So the spawn's already in the compost for us. We just, at the next process I'll show you, we just put supplement in it just to kind of help the mushrooms grow a lot more. But yeah, so those are our two suppliers. Alright, so going back a little bit, within these 3 plants we have 88 growing rooms. They're equivalent, this is what we would call a double. So we have 24 beds of growing space, 9,736 feet of growing space, pretty much. So those 88 rooms, 32 of them are singles, which is half of what this room is, and they are pretty much used for organic production. So this is the beginning of the process. This room was filled last week. So as we can see here, this is the start of the process. What you can see here is the mycelium that is starting to grow. This is basically the spawn of the mushroom. This is going to start spreading, and if we dig in here a little bit, you can see it, that it's starting to grow. So what we want is for this mycelium to spread all into this bed, and it's all one organism, so it's not like each of these is one.
Right.
So it will all be one big organism. We have this covered here for moisture and to keep the compost cool at this process. We want the mycelium to grow, but we don't want it to grow too fast to where, we can't stop it or it's gonna die off.
What's the temperature in here?
The temperature in here, I would say it's about 40, 45-ish, so we want to keep it pretty cool. Okay, so what we're showing you here, it's a room that's 2 weeks older than the room that we were just in before. So after about 14 days of having the mycelium grow just on the compost, then we need to add a casing layer. If we don't add a casing layer, then no mushrooms are gonna grow. You would just get mycelium spreading through the compost. By adding this casing layer, which is pretty much a peat moss mixture with some lime, then we can start to see here that the mycelium is going to connect with the cack, which is pretty much a supplement that we add to the casing layer. And that is how we would get our fruit, which in this case would be the mushrooms. So we can start to see in here, the mycelium is going to come up, and you can see some of the cack growing on the casing layer. So then this mycelium is going to start attaching to the casing layer, and then later that will give us our mushrooms. At this process, this casing layer already has more than 1,000 gallons of water, because you want to give your mushrooms plenty of water to grow. The CO2 in this room is still pretty high. Mushrooms like CO2, they feed off of it. But at one point, a few days later than this process, we got to lower the CO2, and then, because otherwise the mushroom is just going to keep feeding and die, and we want it to become a fruit. So we lower the CO2 in order to let the mushroom become a fruit. We basically want to let it know that it's going to die, otherwise it's got to change so it doesn't die. So then we get our mushroom. So the casing process is pretty much like the filling process we have. We open up the back doors. We have the same system, a pulling winch that's going to pull the casing layer, and I'll show you guys that in a minute, but it's pretty much the same process as filling. Start adding water, because now we have the casing layer, we have the compost. There's a higher temperature in both, so we need to add water to keep
so
that temperature. So it hasn't
been watered until you add the casing layer?
Exactly,
okay.
Yep. Here we are at the process where we do the casing layer. It's pretty much like the fill process. We can see up here, the dirt is gonna come from the tractor here up the belt. They add the supplement in there by hand, pretty much. They add it in the box. Supplement boxes here, they're delivered every day for the rooms we're gonna use them in. So the peat moss is gonna come up there onto that net. The pulling winch is going to pull that net all the way back, and then this here is going to pull the net back this way. So it's just going to kind of pour the dirt onto the bed pretty much. And this is, like we said, a critical process so that the mushrooms can grow. If you don't have that peat moss layer on there, the mushrooms are not going to grow. And once again, this process, where in PA it might take 6 to 7 men, we only have 3 guys doing this here, and it's pretty much operating the machine and guiding it as it runs through the bed. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Here is our computer system for controlling the environment of the mushroom. The mushrooms, the outside field crops, they pretty much depend on the environment, on the weather to grow. In here we have to create the environment for the mushroom to grow. So these computers are pre-programmed with each stage of the crop. We have our spun run, our case holes, which is what we were just in. Then later on we're going to have our harvesting program set up. So this controls the airflow, the humidity inside the room. If you need more cooling, if you need it to be warmer inside the room, it's all done through here. The growers could do this from home. They wouldn't need to be here. They have access to this from home, but it wouldn't give them the experience to see what the room is doing, what the beds are doing. But pretty much everything can be controlled from these computers. As you can see, this room has been recently watered. So we're adding a lot more water because we want to feed our mushrooms here. We dig in here, we start to see that the mycelium is coming up. It's starting to become a lot thicker on the portion of the casing. It's starting to unite. So later on, we're going to start seeing our small pins grow in here. At this stage is when the flushing happens, which is what Jack was saying. So we bump up the CO2, and at day 6 we start lowering it very slow. Every 2 hours it goes down so much, so that our mushrooms start to form, and that we're going to see later in a different room. So right now the plastic, like we saw in the other room, is off. In here we put this plastic because the way the air flows in here, when we start to get those pins, we don't want to create a scaling on top of the mushroom skin, so we put this plastic in here to prevent that. We have some holes to allow some air in there, but not too much for those bottom beds.
Wasn't it nice of me?
Alright, so here we are a week older than the room we were just in. It is a grower's belief that the pins are already what they're going to be. We do 3 breaks to 3 flushes, and we believe that the pins are already in the casing layer. It's just when they decide to grow. So right here we would see our first break, and this is going to be
This is Friday's.
Friday's pick.
2 days from today.
So 2 days from today, this would be, harvesters would come in here and start picking this room. All right, so this is a day later than the day we were just in. Mushrooms grow about 2% every hour from the size they were in before. So in these 3 flushes that I was talking before, our first break gives us about 32,000 pounds of mushrooms. Then our second, which is picked in about a 4-day period. We have 2 shifts, like we said. Typical mushroom farms, it takes them about a week to pick a first break. But here, because we have that night shift, we have the ability to do it a lot faster, which gives us more productivity in the end. So like I said, 32,000 pounds come off of here. At first, our pickers are going to come in here and they're going to start picking the larger mushrooms first to try and give the others room to grow. Then the second group that comes in here is going to take a little bit more, and then eventually they just strip this house full. Once it's stripped off, it takes about another week for the second break to come in. And like you see, it's pretty modern in here. In the wooden houses, you would have 2 floors, and you have your harvesters kind of climbing to pick the mushrooms. In here we have these lorries that allow them to harvest, to go up and down in the mushroom beds. They pretty much have everything in there, and they have their scale. Because of the way that Philip sells their mushrooms, the harvester pretty much takes care of scaling the mushrooms in here, so they don't have to weigh them at the packing house.
Yeah.
It's a lot more efficient. We have our pick and pack right here that you can see. See up here.
And you said 32,000 pounds per room?
Per break.
Per
break. Yeah, we pick a total of about 700,000 pounds a week in here. So we're saying a room gives us about 70 to 80,000 pounds each room.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's amazing. And I just wanted to give a little background. This is my first time working in the mushroom industry, but I come from a few generations of people working in the mushroom industry. My father first came to the U.S. to work in the mushrooms. I never thought I would be doing this, but it's an amazing process. Everything that comes into making this food happen, it's awesome. I mean, it's a huge process. It employs all kinds of people. It's not just the harvesters. When we think of mushrooms, I think we think more of the harvesters, but we have scientists that work making this spawn. We have our growers, which are pretty much our farmers here, and we have food safety. We go to very strict rules of food safety here, so we have to have somebody employed to make sure that all takes place for us. Administrative personnel, you name it. It's pretty much all here in the mushroom industry.
The trays that are in the supermarket. So whatever you see here, we ship it down to the packing area, and they wrap it up and send it up to the store. So after that, ship direct.
Old older than the room we were just in. As you can see, all those little mushrooms that were in that room are now twice the size in this room. So in this room, they still kind of have to come in and take all the mushrooms off of the bed. So our beds are going to end up looking like this area where there is no mushrooms. And you can already see the small pins that are starting to come up from that second break. And that is why we say the pins are already in there. It's just when they decide to grow. And we water these at this point almost every day. Sometimes we water 500 gallons during the day, or 1,000 gallons during the day, and 500 gallons at night. So now it's, you know, we got to keep them hydrated. We got to keep them growing. 80% of what a mushroom is water. So
Okay.
that's why it's so important to keep watering the mushrooms. Older than the first break, the very first room we were in that had mushrooms in it. This is now our second flush of mushrooms. And you can see, I mean, the bed is pretty much full again. We keep watering at this point to keep them hydrated, to keep them growing. Our harvesters are already in here. Like I told you, they take the largest mushrooms to give room to the others to grow. Tonight they'll pick this again to take once again more of the larger mushrooms, and then most likely by the day after tomorrow they're gonna have this stripped again. Then we go on to our third flush. Alright, so this here is a week older than the room we were just in. This is our third and final flush. As you can see, we're starting to see a little bit of decay at this point. We don't get as many mushrooms as we do on those first two breaks. In here, now the mushroom is a lot harder. There's a lot less water, more tissue. Some people prefer these mushrooms because they're just, you lose a lot less when you cook them. You lose a lot more water when you cook that first break.
Right.
Mushroom. In here, I forgot to mention this in the first two breaks, but we sell all different sizes of mushrooms. We sell the larger mushrooms for stuffing. We sell the medium mushrooms, sliced mushrooms, the little mushrooms. You know, they're your regular breaded mushrooms from your pizza place. So all different sizes. And our harvesters. This has to be hand picked. You can't really use the machine because you will damage the mushroom. So it's really, I believe, an art for the harvesters, because they need to know what mushrooms to pick when, and it's all, you know, hand picked. So the room we were just in, this is the end of the process. After the harvesters have been in to do their last pick, this room is gonna get steamed off. So the temperature is gonna rise to about 150 degrees in here. Everything will be sterilized. And then the same process we use to bring the compost in, we're gonna use in reverse to take the compost out. Same, we use a pulling winch, it pulls the net out into a belt, and then from the belt it goes onto the truck. And that gets reused in the fields around us. It gets spread on the fields, so it's all, you know, from mushrooms to helping the fields outside as well.
Excellent.
It's all a community effort.